Hey guys, Jack here. Welcome back to my channel. Just wanted to give you a brief life update as I haven't posted in nearly 2 years. But as some of you may know, I recently joined Bain & Company starting from January this year. And honestly, it's been such a great experience, primarily because of, great cohort, great colleagues, great type of projects. Work-life balance has been much better as well. And honestly, I'd love to talk about it more, but I'll do that in my future videos because in today's video, I'm going to be talking about a typical day in the life of a strategy consultant. And it'll be a work from home edition as I work from home most of the time these days. Before I start the video, I just wanted to put a disclaimer that this isn't representative of a specific consulting firm or anything. This is just a generic overview based on my experience of working across 3 different consulting firms. So what is a typical day in consulting? Well, to be honest, as many of you might have heard of, every single day in consulting is different. Just because one day you might be working towards a specific scope item or deliverable, and then an urgent request comes up from one of the client meetings that you had, or your hypothesis might have to be refined based on your conversations that you have with market experts. Therefore, you have to sort of tailor your analysis and your thinking and your structure and approach based on that. So because every single day is different and it's very hard to generalize what a typical day is in consulting, I'm actually going to narrow down today's video and speak specifically about a day in the life of a consultant working on a commercial due diligence case. And within that, I'm going to specifically walk you through what a junior consultant or an associate consultant might be doing on a kickoff day of a project. So let's say it's Monday, right? And I know that I'm kicking off a new project today because I received an email from the staffing team last Friday saying that I will be staffed on this project. And for example, let's say that I am staffed on a commercial due diligence case focusing on maybe like a home bench press rack, right? So the asset basically, when I mean asset, the company basically makes home bench press racks, which is quite unique, but a lot of the due diligence projects are super niche and unique. So on Friday, I would have likely received a bunch of sort of pre-read materials, often including, but not limited to, number 1, sort of previous internal reports on adjacent markets or assets, and number 2, scope documents, number 3, preliminary findings from the client, and number 4, typically also an investment memorandum, an IM from the investment bank. So throughout the weekend, I'll maybe spend like an hour or 2 just looking through these pre-read materials to make sure that I have an understanding of what the asset does and that I'm prepared for the kickoff meeting on Monday. Now let's come back to Monday, right? So typically kickoff meetings are around 9:30 to 10 a.m. To be honest, it can be any time in the morning. It could even be in the afternoon. But let's say for the purpose of this specific video, the kickoff meeting is at 9:30 a.m. And I'm quite lazy, to be fair, so I typically wake up around 9 a.m. I'll quickly take a shower, I'll cook my breakfast, which is oftentimes a Yakult and 2 biscuits and 2 scrambled eggs, and then I'll feed my lovely cats, Mango and Mochi, who I recently got 3 months ago, and then I'll also play with them a little bit before joining the kickoff call. And then when the actual kickoff call happens, so at 9:30 a.m., the kickoff agenda is typically comprised of, number 1, background overview of the asset and the case context, often led by the leadership team, so the partners in the case. And then number 2, then after we go through the background, we'll then talk about, okay, what the key scope items are and what are the key questions that we need to address. And number 3, we're going to talk about the team structure, so who's going to be aligned to which work stream, who will be reporting to who, etc. And then number 4 would be sort of the team norms, and that may include what is your working style, how does your communication style vary, what do you want to get out of this project, and also, how many days in the week do you want to come into the office versus work from home? And then lastly, as a junior consultant, you can also often speak up and ask any clarifying questions about the actual case or the asset or even the client as well. And oftentimes I, as junior consultant or associate consultant, would be responsible for taking minutes or notes for the kickoff meeting and identifying what the key immediate next steps are. But sometimes, and most of the times you're actually encouraged to speak up and ask any questions if you do have any. So let's say the kickoff meeting usually lasts around an hour to an hour and a half, but for simplicity for this video, let's say it finishes at 11 a.m. So I have my kickoff meeting from 9:30 to 11. Now it's the core team meeting without the leadership team, and there are 3 agenda items. Number 1, we debrief from the kickoff meeting and ask any further clarifying questions we have to the senior manager or the director in the team, or bounce off ideas with each other. Number 2, we discuss priorities for each work stream and what we want to get out of this project. Number 3, we discuss any interdependencies that we might have between the work streams so that we can minimize roadblocks and also minimize limitations in doing our research and analysis by identifying what are the things we need from each other earlier on. So that core team meeting usually lasts about half an hour, and let's say it's 11:30, and this is when the real work starts for me as an associate or a junior consultant. And again, just like I said before, every single day is different, right? And that's the same for a junior consultant as well. I could be aligned to different type of work streams, right? I could be responsible for market sizing work stream. I could be doing competitor work stream, business definition, business model. There's a lot of work streams that I can be part of. So for simplicity and for this video, I'm going to assume that for this home bench press rack project, I will be aligned to number 1, managing the expert networks end to end, and number 2, the data gathering for the market sizing work stream. So I'm responsible for 2 main tasks in this project. So if we start off with expert networks first, basically I just wanted to give you an overview of what expert networks are, just because a lot of you might not be aware of who they are and what they do. Basically, expert networks are a type of companies that act as an intermediary between the consulting firm and the subject matter experts. And expert networks have a pool of industry experts that are specialized in certain fields and industries, no matter how niche that industry might be. So there will be an expert, and I'm not kidding, that can speak to the most niche topics in the world. And I would say maybe home bench press racks, it's not the most niche topic, but it's still a relatively niche area, and there will be an expert that can speak about it. And even more, there will be an expert that can speak about the actual building blocks or the actual materials that go into the production of home bench press racks, right? So basically, expert networks are the go-to when we need to find an expert in a specific industry. And honestly, I just wanted to give a huge shout out to all the expert networks out there, because they add a significant value to us. Because first of all, the quality of the experts they provide, most of the times, it's absolutely great, and we get so much insight from them. And second of all, they basically help us save a lot of time and effort, because they already have a pool of experts that they can leverage, and also they do custom sourcing as well on our behalf. So we as junior consultants or associate consultants don't need to go out and start looking for experts that we can potentially speak to, right? There is already a centralized platform that we can just access experts with. So that is why they're super important. And now you may be thinking, okay, I understand about expert networks, but why do you actually need experts? I'm sure, consultants are smart enough to figure out the hypothesis and validify the assumptions, right? Well, actually not really, because there are 3 main reasons why we might want to speak to an expert. Number 1 is that we want to test our hypothesis with the market experts, and whether that be emerging or a hypothesis that we want to refine. Speaking to market experts that have 25 plus years of industry knowledge in that specific niche would help us refine our hypothesis more accurately. And secondly, we might want to gather qualitative information about the market. For example, let's say I want to know who the main key types of competitors are in the bench press, home bench press rack market. On top of my head, I can't really think of many companies, and I'm not sure how I'm going to sort of segment the different type of competitor archetypes, right? So, and I'm sure you could Google things and use secondary research, but I'm telling you, for very specific niche industries, it is very difficult to find information online. So you would want to speak to a market expert who has in-depth knowledge in that specific field. And lastly, we might want to validify our assumptions on our market sizing model for example, home bench press racks with the experts as well. So these are the 3 reasons why I want to speak to an expert. So now coming back to my day, and I appreciate that was a rather long intro into what expert networks are. So when I say managing expert network process from end to end, let's say it's 11:30 a.m., right? And what I'll do is I typically reach out to 3 or maybe 4 expert networks via email, and I will detail the following things. Number 1 is the project context. Number 2, the screening criteria and questions we want to ask the experts. Number 3, the type of experts that we're looking for, oftentimes very commercially driven experts. And number 4, communication styles between the expert networks and myself. Once I lay those out, I will then create a full draft and send out to the expert networks. And creating this actually doesn't take that long, but sometimes I need to speak to different workstream leaders and understand what kind of experts they need for their specific workstream. So sometimes it takes up to, from 30 minutes to an hour. And then I would also set up like an internal tracker for the experts so we can track who we've spoken to, what type of experts they were, what type of data we gather from them, etc. So let's say it takes an hour and now it's 12:30 a.m. Remember when I said I'm also responsible for data gathering for market sizing model? So basically what I mean by this is, for example, if we're doing a market sizing model for home bench press racks, then I will think about firstly, okay, what are the data points that I need to gather to do a bottom-up market sizing for this market? Well, first of all, if it's a UK market, we will need the UK population, right? Which we can often get from the official National Statistics website. And then you will have to apply assumptions, right? And very simplistically speaking, you could apply, to the UK population, the percentage of people that go to the gym, and out of those, the percentage of people that own any kind of home gym equipment, and then out of those, percentage of people that then own a home bench press rack, right? That's a very simplistic way of thinking about it, but those are sort of the data points you would need and validate as well. And on top of that, you also need pricing data points, right? And obviously, depending on what kind of bench press rack you have, the prices may range, right? So mine was maybe like £100. I don't know if you guys can see. It was really cheap, but some bench press machines go up to about £1,000 if they're really high quality. So obviously gathering these data points is important as well. So once I've thought about the data points that I might need for my model, I would then reach out to the data team internally, as well as any external market research agencies to identify any off-the-shelf market reports that we can utilize. Once I've sent through these data requests, I would then usually take a quick lunch break. So let's say that whole process took an hour from 12:30 to 1:30. I would then go for lunch break at 1:30 and I'll come back around 2 p.m. So for lunch, just because I'm working from home most of the times, I usually do a meal prep. So I'll just have my meal prep, or I'll just go downstairs, get Pret or Subway or sandwich from the shop, and I'll come back at 2. And let's say it's 2 p.m. now, and this is when I have a midday catch up with my supervisor or my manager. And given that it's a first day of working together, typically, and I think this is true for all the consulting firms that I've worked at, we will try to get to know each other firstly and discuss the working styles and communication styles, because some managers prefer calling and some managers prefer you just texting them status update. And then also we'll discuss any sort of development points that you might have from this project, and that goes both ways, so like your development points as well as your supervisor's development points that you could potentially help out on as well. And then we'll also discuss our priorities for the day, right? So for me, because I'm responsible for expert networks and data gathering for market modeling, I will present to him or her and give a status update on, okay, what I've done so far with the expert networks, what I've done so far with the data gathering. Are there any roadblocks? Are there any limitations? If yes, I will also think about, okay, what are some suggestions to get around this, and discuss with him or her how we should proceed. And then after that, we'll also discuss what are the slides we want to get done by end of this week or end of this day, as well as creating a work plan that we work on together throughout the project. So let's say it's after the midday catch-up, which often lasts an hour, and it's 3 p.m. now. As I mentioned, I'm responsible for 2 main things. Number 1, expert networks, and number 2, data gathering for the market modeling, right? So at 3 p.m., what I do is, usually the expert networks would have sent through around 10 to 15 profiles each, which means I have about potentially 60 profiles that I need to review. And here I'm actually looking for the best fit profile that we can speak to first thing tomorrow morning, that will help us get a good understanding of what the overall market is. And so I'll look through the experts and review them and potentially come up with 4 to 5 experts that I want to present in the end of day meeting. And then secondly, in terms of the data request, a couple of reports might have started to trickle down to me. So what I do is, just because a lot of the times when you request data, whether it be internal team or external market agencies, there will be a lot of data points that come back to you. So you need to be organized, right? So what I do is basically collect all of them and file them into different folders for me to review later on. So I would basically do that up until the end of day meeting, which is usually at 4:30. So let's say it's 4:30 p.m. and we have our end of day meeting or end of day huddle, some companies call it. Here, what we do is each work stream then goes through three things. Number one, they go through, okay, what are any emerging hypotheses from any initial research that they've done, initial calls they've done, or from their background reading. Number two, what is sort of their priorities for the evening? And number three, what are any, again, interdependencies across work streams? And in this case, obviously, for me, I would highlight expert networks and expert requests as interdependencies because different work streams require different type of experts at some times. So I would need to get information from each workstream leaders on what they need. So basically, when it comes to me, I would present two main things. Number one is a status update on the expert network stuff. So I would say, okay, so I've reached out to 4 networks. They came back with 60 experts and I reviewed them. And here are a list of 4 to 5 experts that might be super interesting to speak to tomorrow morning. And I will give sort of brief overview of each of the experts and why it would be a good fit for us. And then obviously I'll also ask each workstream leaders to tell me their priorities for the calls they want to do tomorrow and later in the week as well. So secondly, I would provide an update in terms of the data gathering process. And I would say, here are the data points that we've collected. Here are the limitations or roadblocks. How can we get around it? And what are some of the challenges that we need to think about in advance? And then some cases, when you speak to external market research agencies, they often charge quite a bit of money for these external reports, which can range up to thousands of pounds, up to tens of thousands of pounds. And if we do want to purchase them, we would need to get approval from the senior manager or the director. So I would also bring that up as well, and we can discuss whether or not we actually need that data point. So those would be my update, and end of day meeting would probably end around 5 p.m. as it usually lasts half an hour. And then around 5 p.m. to about 6:30 p.m. I would take my extended dinner break, and this is essentially when I go to the gym. So I would spend about an hour in the gym and then I'll spend 30 minutes having my dinner. And I come back around 6:30 p.m. to clear out my evening priorities. And basically what I need to do for the evening, there's not too much left because it's the kickoff day. First of all, I need to schedule the experts that I've talked about earlier in the end of day meeting so that we have good calls lined up for tomorrow morning, and send new priorities to the expert networks based on the conversations with the workstream leaders. Secondly, I need to start reading through the data points thoroughly. And this is super important because firstly, different market reports have different definitions on the market size, and B, not all of the data is always perfect. So for example, I may be able to obtain a data point on the general home gym machine market in the UK, not necessarily the home bench press rack machine market in the UK, right? And obviously this is still a really good proxy data point, right? But I think it's really important to be aware of, okay, what are the limitations of the data that we've just got? So that maybe takes about an hour and a half in the evening, and then let's say it's 8 p.m. I've finished my priorities for the evening. So at 8 p.m. I could definitely just be like, okay, I'm done for the day. But actually what I like to do on the kickoff day at least is from 8 to 9 p.m. at least, I like to go through some of the materials that I haven't been able to go through on the weekend. And the reason for this is because it really helps, I think, to get as much understanding as possible at the start of the project, because then it helps you shape your thinking throughout the project, as well as the questions that you might want to ask and test in interviews as well. So at 9 p.m. I then log off, and that is basically it for the kickoff day. And yeah, I mean, kickoff days are usually not the most busiest, and some of you may be thinking, well, 9 to 9 or 9:30 to 9, that doesn't seem as busy as what I heard from other people. And I mean, to be fair, I think for junior consultants or associate consultants at least, given that you don't need to like blank the slides, or you don't need to create a work plan, you don't need to write interview guides, you don't need to write the survey guide, etc. So your days might be slightly shorter than your workstream leaders, but again, as you sort of progress and as you become a more experienced associate consultant or a junior consultant, you will start getting more responsibilities and your days might get longer. But again, I'm speaking from like a brand new junior consultant, associate consultant perspective, right? In this specific video. So yeah, around 9 p.m. my day would finish, and then just enjoy my evening. So yeah, that wraps up today's video, guys. I hope it was useful, somewhat insightful. and stay tuned for more videos, and have a great summer. Thank you.